3, 2.
I got everybody pregnant with Barry Katz and semen.
I'm not comfortable with the tone this is taking.
If you're undeniable, you will not be denied.
If you want to be successful in show business, you get yourself a Jew white manager like Barry Katz.
Being a manager is just turning no's into yeses.
Creating holy shit moments. Undeniable.
You're fucking firing me up, Katz.
I love this man.
Is there anything else I should know?
You're on. What? Now I'm on the air.
Barry Katz, back in the house.
Let's do this.
Hey everybody, welcome back to an episode of Industry Standard, the Q&A editions. I don't know what happened. I never did these before, but I get calls about them all the time and to do more of them. So hopefully you like it. I just choose questions that have been given to me from all over the world. I really don't look at them beforehand. So my answer to you is on these cards, just what comes in the top of my head. And I've always felt that that's what is best for me. It might not be best for other people, but for me, the spontaneity and the unknown is always fascinating. A little preparation doesn't hurt either, but on these, I like to pull from what my instincts are. If you want to reach me, you can do so at Barry Katz at Twitter or Instagram, or the website at barrykatz.com. And you can go to the YouTube channel and where you are right now and watching this and press subscribe. That would be a dream. All right. First question. What do you think is the most common mistake that early career comedians make? Camden from Portland, Oregon. I think the biggest mistake that comedians make, it's tied together with two different kinds of things. To me, laziness is the biggest thing and the biggest problem that I found with comedians, and that's combined with complicating winning. And because laziness ties into so many things, it's like an umbrella for a lot of different symptoms of why people don't do well. And in turn, it fits into that complicating winning aspect. Some people might say complicating winning is the top of the umbrella and laziness is one of them, an offshoot of it, and maybe treating people poorly another, maybe pointing the fingers at other people instead of yourself. But it all ties together. And to me, it's really huge, because you talk to certain comedians and you ask them how many times you're getting up on stage, and they'll say, oh, I'm getting up, 2 or 3 times a week. And then you talk to another person and they say they're going up like 10 times a week. Then there's people I know that don't even go out, don't even do anything. Yeah, sometimes you'll run into people, they don't even get a license. They don't even have a car. They don't go to the places, or they'll make excuses and say, oh, those people don't like me. They didn't give me the time of day. They didn't give me a shot. And then you find out that some guy who just moved to town, who's never done stand-up comedy in his life, is going up like 14 times a week. And this person who says nobody likes them is going up 1 time a week. And so I think you have to work hard at anything to be great at it. I know what you're saying. There's been comedians that I know who shall remain nameless that weren't always the hardest workers, but they were geniuses. And they could just do things that other people couldn't do. When I was a competitive swimmer in college, there was always people who practiced harder and harder and harder and did well. And then there were people who did nothing and won races. But to hedge your bets and to make sure that you have the best shot of doing things, the biggest mistake to avoid is not giving everything you have in every way, and not taking all these factors and self-sabotaging yourself. The more repetition, the more you go on, The more times you do anything, I don't care if you're a comedian, a magician, a podcast engineer, whatever it is, you have to keep doing it over and over again to become the best you possibly can be. And so you got to get out of the mode that, well, this is why this is happening, and I'll just sit here on the couch instead. It's not going to work. You're not going to get where you want to go. And I find that that's the biggest mistake in how certain comedians are, which leads to other comedians who work harder and more efficiently and don't point fingers to pass them. All right, next question. Do you believe in writer's block? If so, how can comedians deal with it? Marshall from Charleston, South Carolina. Yeah, I believe in writer's block. Everybody who writes has experienced writer's block. But it's not just that. I mean, everybody in life experiences situations where they're not as efficient as they were the day before, and then sometimes they're more efficient. And writer's block is an amazing thing if you have it. If you're a comedian, even a musician. Look, my son is a music producer. He has, I think he has over 7 million streams now. He's got 50,000 monthly listeners. And there's times where he goes without being able to come up with something that he's proud of. And he has writer's block. And yeah, he's 20, but it doesn't matter if you're 20, if you're 30, if you're 80. Firstly, I want to say that if you have writer's block, is a great thing. Because, as my mother said, it's always darkest before the dawn. You can't get to the light without the darkness. So, but if you're, pardon the expression, if you're always sleeping and not really paying any attention to anything, then you'll never have writer's block because you didn't work hard enough to have success as a writer and write great things as a writer. So to me, writer's block is an amazing thing, and it's great because it shows that you're really doing some great stuff, and you only notice that you have writer's block because, you know, you remember how it was before. So to me, the way to get over writer's block is to get out of any slump, is to figure out a way to just jolt yourself, you know, change the pattern of how you're doing things. Put yourself in situations within the realm of what kind of things you want to write and throw yourself into those things. So in other words, if you're, let's say you're writing a script and it's a scene that happens on a subway train and you got writer's block, then start taking the train, you know, just around town when you can, and start observing and looking at things that can inspire you. Or if you're a comedian and you got writer's block and you're not really thinking about things that are funny, just go back to the style and the things that you wrote that you're most proud of and read them over to yourself, maybe preferably on a page of paper written out. So you understand how you write. You already know how you write. But as you know, like even the greatest baseball pitchers in the world, they bring in the coach to check on their mechanics when they're in a slump. Or the greatest hitters, hitting coaches come in. Obviously Aaron Judge knows how to hit and hit home runs. But in the playoffs, he was not doing that. He was in his writer's block. And it took people to work with him to get him out of it. And what they do is they just go back to the fundamentals. They just go back to show him videotape of how he was at his best. So that's what you got to do as a comedian. You got to look at your stuff, even though you don't like looking at yourself, and see yourself on stage and see what you're doing and what you're writing and how you're writing. Or if it's written on the page, that you can put it down there somewhere or get it out of your computer. Just look at the structure of how you're doing things. And I guarantee you, slowly but surely, you'll get out of the writer's block. What are your thoughts on cancel culture in the world of comedy? Eric in Nashville, Tennessee. I have very specific thoughts on this, and I've stated them a few times on other podcasts, I think. I truly believe that there should be a governing body for the entertainment business, like a board of directors, a president, somebody who makes decisions, like the commissioner of football or the commissioner of baseball. I mean, you've read these things, like, why can't there be some kind of rules and regulations of how things are? Like a guy in football, they find the videotape of him beating up his girlfriend and kicking her outside the elevator. And he's called into the commissioner's office, and it's almost like comical. It's like, so let's look at the videotape. Yeah, there you are, grabbing your girlfriend's hair, throwing her against the wall there. Then you push her to the ground, and then you kick her outside the elevator. Not good. So let's just tell you what your penalty is going to be. Joe, what was the penalty for the last guy who kicked his wife and pulled her hair and 8-game suspension without pay? Okay, that's your suspension, and that's your punishment, and okay, and we'll see you in 8 weeks back on the football field. But in the entertainment business, it's crazy. I mean, it's fucking crazy. Kevin Spacey is like one of the greatest actors of our entire generation. And the guy was accused of doing a bunch of things. Guy actually went in a court of law to try to figure out a solution so people could say, okay, either I did this or I didn't do this. Now, granted, everybody knows what they did or they didn't do, but you're supposed to be judged by a jury of your own peers. He was exonerated. The guy hasn't worked in fucking 9 years, 8 years. It's insane. It's like, why? Let's presume that he did it. Why isn't there a governing body that says, okay, you did this, and you're going to be suspended from the entertainment business for a year. You can't do any films, any television, any media, but then in 1 year, you can come back. Louis C.K. I wasn't in the room. Louis, I've always had respect for and loved. He was my first client ever. He knows what he did. The women know what he did. And his punishment is the guy has not worked in 8 years or more. He has to create his own content that he puts up on his website, does his own personal appearances. The guy can't do anything. Why? Why can't he do so? Why isn't there somebody who gives him a punishment? He serves his punishment like everybody else in society does, and then he's back on the playing field. And why is there a double standard all the time? Like Louis' stuff is like pulled off the air. Kevin Spacey, they canceled the television show. Michael Jackson, songs play forever. Broadway shows and Vegas shows made about him. Merch selling out the window, millions of dollars. I don't get it. So, in my opinion, I think cancel culture is really, really awful. I think there should be consequences when you do things that are not really that nice, just like in life. Now, the other side of the coin is, when I was starting in comedy, like one of my best friends throughout my career was Buddy Hackett, one of the greatest comedians of all time, did the first two HBO specials. And, he was working in a time of Don Rickles. And if you watch those old performances, you can't even say any of that stuff today. They wouldn't even be working. They took stuff out of movies and TV shows. Meanwhile, The Office, with 80 billion views, the lead character is saying at least 3 things every show that you can't say. In the workplace, you can't say on television, you can't say, but because it's such a juggernaut, nobody does anything. And I think there's a double standard. And I think truly, again, I think there should be some kind of system like there is in the world, in every country, for when somebody does something wrong, they serve their time, and they get integrated back into society. They might not get the best jobs right away, but at least they can work. So that's my feeling on that. All right, next question. What's the most difficult part about managing comedians? Will Johnston, Austin, Texas. I think the most difficult part about managing, it sort of goes back to the first question, because you have to be a chameleon as a manager. You have to adapt and adjust to everybody's idiosyncrasies. So, like, I was just out with Brad Williams and overseas in Dublin and London, and I think Brisbane, Melbourne, Perth, Adelaide, Auckland, New Zealand. And, I'd be talking to a lot of the people who were running the theaters, these big theaters overseas. And this is like, basically the first time he's going. And it's great. The places are just packed. Crowds are excited. But the people running the venues, they're used to people, I think, that are difficult or that have, and they go over all these different things with you. And I think one of the things I say to each one of them is, in regards to Brad Williams, I say, listen, I know your job is to make sure everything goes smoothly, but the lights could fail. The sound could go off. There could be 16 hecklers that weren't taken care of. There could be no craft service, no dinner beforehand, people being rude, the merch is in the wrong place. And Brad will just be like, it's like breathing. It doesn't matter. He rolls with the punches. And when times are difficult or they don't go the way they're supposed to go, he uses it to his advantage and has fun with it. And I think a lot of people take things too seriously of how they want things to be or how they think things should be. And as opposed to just going with the flow. I'm not saying you should compromise your values, but I think one of the most difficult things in working with certain artists throughout my career is that, there are certain people who, on a scale of 0 to 100, 0 to 100, and if you've represented a certain number of artists, there's going to be, let's say, as a manager throughout your career, a long career, you represented 100 artists. There's going to be one that's the least stressful to everybody and the nicest person and just always treats everybody like they're the Queen of England or the President of the United States or the Pope or Mother Teresa. And there's going to be the 100th one who doesn't treat people right, takes a tone with people, loses their temper, makes people feel uncomfortable, is controlling, isn't generous, And there's going to be everything in between. And to me, the most difficult part are the people who are so talented and so incredibly powerful, and the fans love them. But they just don't have the emotional tools in their toolbox to be the best representation of themselves across the board with everybody in the industry. And it wears on people, and it takes its toll. And eventually people would rather choose not to work with those people than work with them.
Hey everybody, it's Barry Katz, and I wanted to talk to you about Blueprint for Success. This is a community that I put together during the pandemic to help all artists of every walk of life in the entertainment business. No matter where you are in that part of this journey, it's designed to help you. There are podcasts with people that will inspire you, like Kevin Hart, Judd Apatow, Bill Burr, that you can't find anywhere else but on this program that I've interviewed, to times where we get to talk to executives in the business that you would never have access to tell you what you need to hear and to answer your questions, to all sorts of different videos and master classes designed to help you get to the promised land. That's what the Blueprint for Success is. Doesn't matter whether you want to be a stand-up comedian, a sketch performer, a podcaster, an actor, an actress, director, writer, social media person, whatever you want to be. I've been doing this for 40 years. I've had the honor and been humbled to represent people like Chappelle, Wanda Sykes, Louis C.K., Dane Cook, and probably over 20 other people who went from a studio apartment to being a multi-millionaire and a household name. And I want that for you, and I wanted to take the time with this program to be able to help you on your way there, to get there and to heighten and increase the trajectory of your career. Blueprint for Success is the way to go. I'm proud to be a part of this program, and I'd be proud to have you to be a part of it too.
Okay, next question. Do you think quality or quantity matters more when generating ideas for jokes and sets? Darla from Edmonton, Canada. That's a great question, but an easy question for me is that it's all about the quality. I would rather see somebody with 5 extraordinary minutes than see somebody for an hour doing routines on dogs and cats, airlines, and fast food. You know, it just... I think of somebody who I remember seeing for the first time. I met him when I was doing the Fraser Smith show at midnight at KLOS every Sunday. And he'd just come in from Finland. And I'm talking about Ismo. He was telling me that he came here and he was looking to do a late night television show, or he was close to doing one. Can't really remember. But I remember when he did it, and his first television appearance was Conan. And he had a 5-minute routine on the language and how the language was difficult for him coming from Finland to the United States. And it was like a 5 or 6 minute routine, and the last 4 minutes was just about the premise that the word ass was the most difficult word in the English language for him to decipher what it means in a sentence or in a phrase. And I'm not going to give it away if you haven't seen it, but you'll Google Ismo, I-S-M-O, on Conan, his first set, and you'll see. And so when I saw that, I was like, holy shit, that is insane. I mean, I don't even know I don't even know if I can name 3 people who could write like that and make it funny. It's just so great. And I think that if he only had that 5 minutes, I'd want to go see him. I don't care. I want to go see it over and over again. I'd want to go see Chappelle's crack baby routine, the baby selling drugs, or George Carlin's 7 words you can't say on television, or Chris Rock, black people and the N-word. You know, the quality of the material is everything. It just doesn't matter. I saw a comedian open up in Australia, and they had incredible premises, like about things that you don't even like, you know, you don't even see people doing a routine on. Like one guy did a whole routine on non-alcoholic beer and what he considered to be the metaphors for non-alcoholic beer in life. And it was incredible. But then he backed it up by doing a joke with a formula where, like, it was this obvious formula. And I'm not going to give away his joke, but I think the best way to describe it is I can give away this guy's joke because he loves it and he knows that he does it, and it's a part of his persona. But this kind of formula where you're like Mark Cohen, who hosted the Comedy Cellar and also in Vegas at the Comedy Cellar, he'll do a bit where he'll just be on stage and be like, "You guys are a great crowd. Last night, oh man, there was this guy, he was drunk. I was doing well. He stood up. He said, 'Hey, comedian, I fucked your mother.' Sir, could you sit down, please? I'm trying to have a great show here. I do 5 more minutes. I'm killing." Stands up again. "Hey, comedian, I fucked your mother." I'm like, "Sir, please. We're having a great show here. We're all having a good time." I go on. I'm killing some more. He stands up again. "Hey, comedian, I fucked your mother." Finally, I just looked at the guy. I said, "Listen, Dad, could you sit down, please?" And so it was one of those kind of formulas that's a common formula after he did an extraordinary premise in like 5 minutes on non-alcoholic beer. And so I'm always going to go for the quality, the quantity. I know what you're saying. Well, the sooner I get to an hour, I'll be able to make more money. But then your reputation is such that you're making money, you're going out there, but you're not gaining the respect of your peers and eventually the world, which eventually will speak and make you the star that you know you can be and will. Next question. I am a college student and I'm planning to pursue comedy full-time once I graduate. What should I be doing now to make that possible? Nina in Sacramento, California. The way to do it is just to get up, to it's like going to the gym. You can't go to the gym once a week and expect to look like the guy who goes to the gym or the girl who goes to the gym 7 times a week. So you got to figure out your schedule, and you got to figure out where you can go on stage as much as possible. And that could be at school. You could arrange your own coffee houses once a week while going to the open mic nights around town. You can do whatever you need to do to get up on stage to make it so that transition is smoother and cleaner. Because if you don't do that, then you're going to be behind when you start as opposed to getting a leg up and an advantage. And in college, there's a lot of places where you can perform. A lot of places. A lot of coffee houses, a lot of open mic nights, a lot of things like that. And you can plan and build your own shows as well. So to me, that's the way to do it. So you're prepared as much as possible before you get out there in the world and start doing the comedy. Next question. What have been the most prominent changes to the comedy scene in terms of form, style, and logistic in recent years? Aubrey in Boise, Idaho. To me, the most significant change happened with Dane Cook with social media. I was fortunate to work with him and to help him as best I could to work and create these websites and social media platforms and support him in what he was doing on Napster in the early going. And that changed his life to where he was pressing a button and selling out Madison Square Garden and Boston Garden. So I think social media is the biggest thing that's changed. And in social media, you can do all sorts of forms of entertainment. You can do sketch, you can do short films, you can do stand-up, you can do improv, you can do anything. I was in Australia, there was a guy named Speed, and there were thousands of people running through the streets of Auckland and I think parts of Australia as well. You just do what you do and gain your following. And I think the changes with social media are such that before social media, you to reach the world, you have to do something somewhere that reached the world, or word of mouth had to reach the world. You know, I remember when I was going to college, Aerosmith used to pass out flyers in Harvard Square. You know, now people who have a band press a button and it reaches different regions, different analytics. If you want to do a show in Boise, Idaho, Aubrey, you can look at the analytics and see how many people on your social media are from that area with a 100-mile radius, and you can pinpoint and focus on them. It's crazy. So to me, that's the biggest change in form and style, but it's on the other side. YouTubers can go on and sell out shows and do Q&A and put their sketches on the big screen. They can invite comedians to work with them. So I think that's the biggest thing that's the change, because to me, comedians have always been able to do big arenas. They're just doing more now. There's more of a boom. They've always been able to do theaters, but there's just more people able to do the theaters. It's an interesting hierarchy from the, low-level clubs to the bigger clubs to the biggest clubs to the small theaters, the big theaters, and then to the NBA arenas and beyond. And some people, baseball stadiums like Bill Burr at Fenway Park and Gabriel Iglesias at Dodger Stadium. So, yeah, that's what I'd say about that. Last question this round. How do you think being a comedian has changed with the rise of social media? And do you think the impact has been negative or positive overall? Raphael, Burlington, Vermont. That's really fascinating. That last question, my answer was social media, and here's this. So, it's a great segue. Social media has been incredible for the comedy world. I mean, there isn't anything that I know of that's been better. I mean, it's truly insane when you think about it. For those that are old enough to remember, 40 years ago, Louis Anderson and Roseanne Barr did The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. 5 minutes. I used to represent Louis Anderson. I even remember his first 3 or 4 jokes. And before I go on with the answer to this question, it's just a metaphor for everything. You see how powerful and how much rehearsal he had and how he told the story about his life that was personal to him, but also took the piss out of himself. I remember he got introduced, the applause was coming, and first line was, "Listen, I don't have much time, I'm in between meals." And for those of you who don't know, Louis Anderson was a very heavy person. And then, he had these few other jokes. I think he said, before I got here, I stopped off at McDonald's. They had to change those numbers on the sign. Or something like that. The next line was, I went shopping before I came here. What's this one size fits all? And then the last line was, I'm trying to get into shape. I went to the beach. getting the LA lifestyle. Didn't work out too well. People kept pushing me back in the water. 4 jokes in a row, fucking killed. I'll never forget that. But there was no social media back then. But millions of people watched. And within 6 months, he was playing 5,000-seat theaters with another person who debuted their comedy for 5 minutes on The Tonight Show, Roseanne Barr. And so that's what you had back then. Now, it's crazy. Just since I mentioned Brad Williams in this question, I'll stick with him. You know, Brad's done, 3 or 4 specials that have been on Netflix and Showtime and God knows where else. And they did well. And he makes an incredible living as a stand-up and selling out shows and doing great. Then he decided to spend his own money and make his own special in New York City. And edited it, put it on his YouTube channel. And, you know, within a few months, there's like 3 million people who watched it. And I'm watching these shows sell out. I'm watching him add more shows. I'm watching him sell merch. There's lines like for 2-3 hours to meet him. It's insanity. And it's all because he bet on himself and social media. It's over 40 million, I think 50 million views on videos in the past few months. And it's the engagement. Can you imagine if if you're old enough to remember, can you imagine following Frank Sinatra or Led Zeppelin? Or the Ramones, or George Carlin or Cosby before the incident. I mean, it would be incredible to know what they're thinking, what they're doing, to get an insight into their life. I think it's just been incredible for the whole comedy business. It's really exciting, the different platforms where you can reach people through podcasts, through other people's podcasts, through short bursts of sketches or little pieces that you do every day as an artist. It's fantastic. All you got to do is watch anybody randomly. Like, just take a person I represented that I love, Bert Kreischer. Just watch his feed for like a week. It's fun, unique, special, variety. It's great. I think the negative impact is that sometimes people say things on social media that are not positive, and they're not something that people would think enhance the craft or enhance the business. They're just a darkness that overcomes it, that seeps in sometimes, and I think that's very challenging. And I don't like that part of it, and I don't know who does. Probably the people who just write the negative stuff or say the negative things. But to me, I hope I answered the question, because I don't even know what the next thing is. Nobody knows what the next thing is. But social media is something that, from when Dane Cook started till now, for artists, has changed the face of how people promote shows, how they get their fans to shows, how they get excitement throughout the world for them as an artist, and how they get them ready for their next performances in the future on television or on their YouTube channels. Just look at Andrew Schultz. The guy does a special with Comedy Dynamics. He realizes, hey, I got to bet on myself. He buys it back. He's working NBA arenas. Tony Hinchcliffe, guy who pitched Kill Tony to people, Comedy Central Past. He's got the #1 podcast in the world. Look at what Joe Rogan's doing. He's changing the game. The guy potentially changed an election. It's just an incredible time. And if you're not using social media to your benefit and you're like, I'll post once a week or I'll do this or that, it's the same thing that we talked about in this episode. is that you got to keep doing more than the other person, and quality over quantity. But if you can merge quality and quantity, get a helmet, because things are going to be going really, really well for you. All right. I love this episode. Thank you guys so much for these questions. They mean a lot to me. I appreciate it. And again, please subscribe to this YouTube channel, and you can reach me anytime you want at Barry Katz at Twitter and Instagram, or at barrykatz.com. Until next time, thanks again. I appreciate all your support.